what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm basically going to be reacting to a video I made 2 years ago. Back in the winter of 2016, I uploaded a video titled The Great Rating Crisis of 2016, where I basically talked about a lot of my confusion in rating books, a lot of the internal conflict I was going through regarding my rating scale, and basically it was just me like overanalyzing my 5-star rating scale for about 9 minutes. I do consider this to be probably one of my favorite videos I've ever posted just because I feel it is very introspective, it's very thought-provoking, and I'm really proud of the way that I presented my thoughts on this subject. But of course, it's been 2 years, and my views on rating scales have totally changed. So I thought it'd be really interesting to go back, watch this video, and comment on it in the perspective that I have now. So let's just dive right into Fetus Emma videos. Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm doing a somewhat random video. So in 2016, I realized that I really wanted to be more critical when it came to rating and reviewing books. In 2015, I feel like I just rated everything 5 stars, and I really did enjoy the majority of the books I read last year. But looking back on it, I just feel like I didn't do as good of a job as I could have while judging them. So I really wanted to make a video just doing some self-reflection, bringing up some of the questions and concerns I have, and hopefully through discussing this topic with you guys, I can make some of the changes that I'd like to my rating scale. I do think that by making this video, it was really helpful in determining what I really wanted to do with my reviewing style and rating scale, so it definitely accomplished what it was supposed to at the time. I personally rate my books on a 5-star scale with like half points in between. Part of that is probably associated with Goodreads because that's how they do their rating scale, but I just feel like some other forms of rating are just way too broad. So now that I've decided on this 5-star 9-point scale, I have to actually figure out what those different ratings mean. The way I've always personally interpreted it was 5 stars means I really loved it, 4 stars means I really enjoyed it, 3 stars means it was good or it was okay, 2 stars means that I was pretty underwhelmed, and 1 star means that I really hated it. So I definitely think just off of that, my rating scale in itself has totally changed. For 5 stars, my rating is now that I absolutely loved it and I thought it was a masterpiece of a book. For 4 stars, I also really enjoyed my time reading it, but I didn't think it was perfect. For 3 stars, it was somewhat enjoyable, but it had significant flaws that impacted the story for me. 2 stars is I was very underwhelmed and overall I didn't really enjoy my time reading it. And 1 star is pretty much the same. I hated it and I don't think it has any redeeming qualities. For my half stars, with 4.5 stars, I use that to identify books that I loved as much as a 5-star read enjoyment-wise, but I don't feel it deserved 5 stars due to the construction of the story. And with 3.5 stars, I enjoyed the book as much as a 4-star book, but certain flaws made me hesitant to give it a higher rating. As you can see with my half stars, I tend to use the whole number above to represent my enjoyment and the whole number below to represent my feelings on the execution of the story. With 2.5 stars and 1.5 stars, I do not use them frequently at all. I don't think I've ever rated a book 1.5 stars, but it would probably follow the same format of the whole number above meaning my enjoyment and the whole number below meaning my feelings on how the story is independent of my enjoyment. My problem is that I feel like on my personal rating scale, my 4-star rating is super close to my 5-star rating, whereas my 3-star rating is super far away from my 2-star rating. It's like the 4-star rating is super comparable to the 5-star rating, whereas 2 stars is a complete downgrade from 3. I feel that subconsciously I just think of like the distance between 3 and 2 being so different, like on totally different scales, even though each point is equidistant from each other. So as you go down in star ratings, they really should be kind of similar as to like 1 star above or 1 star below, instead of it being really great to really bad really fast. I've just always struggled with keeping the star ratings equal from each other instead of having the top 2 be so negatively skewed and the bottom 2 be so positively skewed. As an improvement, I definitely feel like I really evened out the distance between my star ratings. I think that might be related to the fact that since filming this video, I've really tried to break free of rating any book I just like overall enjoy 5 stars, and I've allowed myself to get more comfortable with docking stars and half stars for how I feel about the novel critically. And although I still rate the majority of my books between 4 and 5 stars because I genuinely enjoy everything I read, I don't pick up anything if I don't think it's going to be a 4 or 5-star read for me, but I do have more 4-star reads in my like reading resume, and even more 3 and 3.5 stars as well. And as those are still my more used ratings, I do feel like the distance between 5 and 4 stars is more even and a little bit further apart than it used to be, and I think that's a really great thing. So then we hit the point in my thought process where I'm like, how does this book that I'm currently about to rate compare to other books that have that same rating? For example, I might just finish a book and absolutely love it. I feel like it has no flaws and it deserves 5 stars, absolutely. But then I think, well, I gave Harry Potter 5 stars, and I gave The Mortal Instruments 5 stars, and I gave The Hunger Games 5 stars. So is this book really a 5-star book? I mean, for me, those are really extreme examples of 5 stars, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. So if my answer to that question is no, my next thought is, well, does that mean that there's different levels under each number star rating? And if so, does that mean that my scale is actually invalid and that it's wrong to group these books together? I still struggle with finding the line between having a consistent scale where I am comparing books to other books of the same rating and allowing myself to have different levels within that one rating. When I do finish a book and I'm trying to decide on a rating, I do still frequently ask myself, well, I gave this book however many years ago 4.5 stars, so does this book that I just read still deserve 4.5, or is it more of a 4? And over the last 2 years, I've realized it's kind of impossible for every book to be given the same rating to actually be viewed equally, especially because I use such a small scale. When looking at my Goodreads statistics at the time of filming this video, I've rated 232 books 5 stars over the past 4 years. There is no way that 232 books can be viewed the same in my head. Some of those books are 5 stars because of the pure enjoyment that I felt while reading them, and some of those books are 5 stars because I think the execution of the story was flawless, even if I didn't enjoy it exactly as much as another book that also got 5 stars. I have found that comparing books to each other can be more helpful when it comes to rating books in a series. It feels more fair to say, did I enjoy book 2 as much as I enjoyed book 1 of this same story, as compared to, did I enjoy this YA fantasy story as much as I enjoyed this adult mystery thriller, you know what I mean? Regardless of how expansive or limited the different types of books you read are, it is so difficult even to compare 2 books that are of the same genre and deal with similar subject matter, just because books are all different from one another and therefore their ratings kind of must be, in my opinion. While I do aim for my personal rating scale to remain consistent and to follow similar guidelines for each individual point on the scale, I've come to realize it's just not probable for each book on one point to all be viewed identically, and that's totally okay. At the time of filming this video, I felt so much pressure for every single book I rated 5 stars, for example, to be the exact same thing in terms of my reading experience and the author's skill when it comes to writing the novel, but the past few years have enabled me to identify the difference between comparison and categorization, which I've used 2 different things. I don't think the fact that every book I rate 4 stars is not the exact same 4 stars means that my scale is invalid. I just think the subject matter that I'm measuring might be a little bit too complex for the scale I'm currently using, and I'm okay with that for now. While I understand that ratings can be a very personal thing that we use to express how much we like a book, they're also widely used to determine where a book lies on a spectrum on how it compares to other books. I mean, think about it. Disregard books for a second. Just think about ratings in general. How do you feel when you look online and see a new movie that came out and it only has 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, or if you're looking for new restaurants and the one you were considering going to ends up only having 2 stars? While rating scales can be used as an arbitrary concept, a lot of times they're used to determine something's worth. Although my opinions on rating scales have totally become more individualized and lenient since filming this video, I wholeheartedly still agree with this statement. I totally recognize that every person's rating scale is going to be different from one another. You know, my 4 stars might be your 2 stars, or it might be your 5 stars, or it might be your 3 stars, but I don't think we can totally separate that from the fact that people will take your rating, translate it into their own conception of what that rating means, and sometimes use it to make their own conclusions on the book's value. Especially as somebody who has an audience and people that follow my reviews, people might see a 3-star rating from me, and regardless of what I personally mean by that, they will take it to mean anything from Emma somewhat enjoyed this book to Emma really did not like that book. And there are a few people who will definitely take that into consideration for if they think they should pick up the book or not. So although I presently embrace the fact that rating scales are really individualized and they mean something different to every person, I can't ignore the fact that ratings are still on a widely recognized spectrum and people will take them into consideration regarding the book's value, and that will always add an additional pressure on me to make my ratings more consistent and to still compare books to keep that rating as clear and constructive as it can be. But I'm really curious curious as to what's actually more important when we're rating a book. Is it comparison or individuality? Which I think when I was writing this video, I had really aimed for my rating scale to be very focused on comparison. I wanted it to be more similar to the rating scales of other reviewers so that when people looked at my rating, they knew exactly what I meant. I felt a severe pressure to have my rating scale be less about my personal enjoyment of the book and more about how the book stacks up to others, as well as how my rating scale compares to other reviewers. It seemed as if by rating on my personal enjoyment factor, my reviews were less critical than others and therefore less valid. Now I definitely focus on the individuality of my reading experience. I've accepted the fact that my independent rating scale is totally different from everyone else's, and that's a great thing. And I've also worked really hard to make it so my reviews are more in-depth and clear so that people don't need to rely just on the rating to understand what I'm talking about, and they can determine how I feel about the book by reading the review. That's an absolute change from when I first filmed this video, and I'm really happy about it. I feel so much more confident and happy reviewing books because it's strictly about me and not about others and how they conduct their ratings. So I don't consider myself to be a reviewer in like any respect, but I will admit there is a handful of people on the internet that do appreciate my opinions on books. For example, you guys. That being said, I feel like my personal reading habits interfere with what I feel a book deserves a lot of the time. This whole string of thoughts I have right here under this topic is really confusing, and I don't know if I'm gonna get it across actually the way I want it to, so just bear with me. So let me try and break this down into an example. I recently read The Diviners by Libba Bray, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I loved almost everything about this book except for the multiple perspectives. Now, I almost always dislike books if they have multiple perspectives. I could love everything else about a book, but for some reason, I can never give it a 5-star rating just because it has multiple perspectives. Yeah, I'm over that. It's not like I intentionally do that, it just so happens that multiple perspectives are kind of distracting to me as a reader, and there's something that I don't like about them as a personal reader. So with that info, I'm sure you guys can guess that I only ended up giving The Diviners a 4.5-star rating. Fuck that, The Diviners gets 5 stars. And if I were to disregard my dislike for the multiple perspectives, it definitely would have been 5 stars. So
Disregarded.
I'm pretty confident that this is just something that I deal with being the neurotic person that I am, but a lot of times, especially lately, I find myself getting so frustrated when I have to sit down and analyze the content of a book. Like, I know that this book deserves 5 stars. I wish I could give it 5 stars, but with who I am as a reader, I just can't do it. And this isn't just with multiple perspectives. I mean, this happens in a lot of cases. We all have our own reading biases and our own reading preferences. I mean, this happens with multiple genres for me and multiple tropes that a book is centered around. And I'm fully aware of the fact that when rating a book, my responsibility is to be honest, not to give it what I think it deserves for other people. Like I said, ratings are a personal thing, and I understand that, but I just hate giving out this rating and presenting it to the world when I know that, like, I'm not loving it to the potential that I could just because of who I am as a reader. I just can't help but get angry with myself for having these reading biases constantly every time I read and letting it affect what I think a book actually deserves. I think it's a problem with me as a reader, not so much as a rater, but still I feel like they're so connected with the things that we prefer in a book and how it affects our ratings that I had to include it here. After I learned to accept that individuality was a core thing I wanted to emulate with my ratings, there have definitely been less instances where I am compelled to give a book, for example, a higher rating because I think other people will enjoy it and it was my reading preferences that sort of made me take away stars. And I'm really pleased about that. I think it's actually helped me to feel as if my reviews are being more genuine and critical because I'm not like pleading to the audience, I'm being honest and open about how I personally feel about it, even if other people 100% have the opportunity to feel differently. Reading biases are something that every single reader possesses. We all have certain tropes that we dislike, or we have certain themes that we feel strongly about, and our rating really depends on how that is represented throughout the novel. Everyone has them, and there is no reason for me to feel guilty about that and for having that play into my ratings because my personal preferences are a huge part. They're the reason I feel certain ways about books, and there's nothing wrong with that. Currently, my reviews are about me, my reading taste, my reading preferences, and that's the way it should be. I really want to work on getting rid and breaking down all of those reading-related grudges that I feel are totally preventing me from reaching the potential that I could to like a book. I just feel that if I was more open-minded and I wouldn't let these preconceived biases really determine a book from the start for me, that it would help me rate books more honestly and let me give a more accurate representation of what it's worth to me. I feel a little conflicted on this statement because I agree with it and I feel I've done it, but not necessarily for those reasons. At the time of filming this, I definitely had way more reading biases than I do currently. For example, with multiple perspectives, I love books with multiple perspectives now. I used to have an aversion to high fantasy. I love high fantasy now. Same with adult books. So by breaking down certain reading biases, I've allowed myself to enjoy more types of books, and that's a great thing. But I don't necessarily think that breaking them down is like super beneficial when it comes to rating books, because those biases and those preferences are so crucial to your individual reading experience, and they are things that should be included in the books. It's not a bad thing to dislike a certain genre or to not enjoy reading about a certain subject and have that be reflected in your review, because people are reading them to get your personal experience, not the experience of somebody else that doesn't have those preferences. So I am very happy that over these last 2 years I have become a more open-minded reader, and I don't like my past experiences with certain things necessarily prevent me from enjoying a book, which I think is really, really great. So that really concludes my great rating crisis of 2016. The rest of the video is literally like a full minute and a half of me just like asking for prompts of things you can write in the comments. So overall, after watching this video again 2 years later, I am like so much happier with my reading and rating and reviewing style, and I couldn't be more pleased about that. As an online reviewer, I think I'll always feel compelled to perfect my rating scale and to improve my reading and reviewing skills, which is a great thing. I think that's something that every online reviewer should have. But I've definitely given myself a little bit of leniency. I have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the different levels within one rating and being more accepting of my own personal reading experience, as opposed to needing to be like strict and consistent and comparing myself to others and books to other books all the time. I had a really great time watching this video and noticing my own improvements, because I feel really positive about it now. But definitely let me know in the comments below, how did you feel about my great rating crisis of 2016? And I guess this could be considered my somewhat less intense great rating crisis of 2018. If you have any strong feelings on certain things about your personal rating scale or online reviewing culture in general, I'd really love to know them, because I think this is such an interesting discussion to be had in the community. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new video. Bye!